hadn't seen before, that we are adopting our third child. And so today I wanted to pop on and just talk about adoption. I get questions definitely every week asking, did we always know we wanted to adopt? And what did we do once we decided to adopt? And what does that process look like? So I want to talk about it today. I do have a blog post where I have referenced most of these questions, and I will link it at the end. So if you just want to skip through and read the blog post, it's there for you. Lots of frequently asked questions, but I know sometimes it's just nice to talk face to face. So as I'm doing this, if you have some questions, feel free to send them over. Otherwise, we will just jump right in. So question number one that I get asked a lot is, did we know that we always wanted to adopt? And the answer is absolutely not. My husband and I, Robert, had never talked about adoption before we got married, and really we hadn't talked about it even into marriage. It wasn't until I was watching some show on PBS that I really feel like the Lord spoke to me and said, Katie, your first child will come through adoption. And I thought, well, that's really weird. We haven't even tried to get pregnant yet. And isn't that like the pathway? People try to get pregnant, they walk through infertility, and then they adopt. Isn't that what happens? But it was very, very clear. This is where your first child will be. And so I asked my husband, Robert, what he thought of the idea. And he was like, I don't get it. Why would we do that? Which sounds crazy now, but we did not grow up around adoption, and the idea was very unheard of. So I presented the idea to him. He essentially said, no, thank you. And for the next year, that feeling in me kept growing, and I just sat and prayed about it for at least a year. I kept bringing the idea to the Lord, like, did I hear you wrong? We obviously have to be on the same page about this. What? So anyway, eventually the Lord put Robert and I on the same page. He did like a 180. He just said, okay, baby, I'm ready. We should adopt, definitely. And so from there, we had a lot of decisions to make. If you guys have thought about adoption, you know that it can be really overwhelming, like domestic or international, and you can choose gender and race, and you've got a giant list of medical conditions that you can check yes or no to, and it can just feel very overwhelming with how to begin. And so we started just praying Psalm 32:8, where the Lord says, I will instruct you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye upon you. That was like my mantra. He will direct us exactly where we need to go. And really, I only had one friend who had adopted or had even been in the process. And so she said, this is the home study group I used. And we were like, cool, I trust that you chose a really good one. And we did that. And then she said, this is the agency we used. It was actually a consultant group. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we looked into them and we thought, that sounds perfect. Okay, we'll do that. And we really just prayed that the Lord would make every one of our next steps clear. And he did. It was really beautiful how it all fell exactly into line. So every state is different when it comes to adoption. In Tennessee, the goal of foster care is to reunify families. I think I've heard in California, like most people go through foster care to adopt. That is not the case in Tennessee. And we knew that we were ready to adopt a child, so we felt like foster care was not right at the time. Maybe eventually, but it has not been right yet because we really want to grow our family. So we checked that off our list. Then we had to decide, did we want to use an agency, or we'd heard about consultant groups. So a consultant group is a little bit different. They kind of act as like a middleman between yourself and an agency, and they work with multiple agencies. So the cons are that you pay them a fee. Originally, ours was maybe like $1,500. It's gone up since then, but that was the original price. And then other cons are that you don't necessarily know which state your child might be born in. They work with agencies all over the country. So, had we chosen one agency like Bethany, I'm sure you guys have heard of Bethany right here in Tennessee, we would probably end up with a child in Tennessee. When we worked with our consultant group, they worked with so many agencies that we could get placed all over the country, and that was just something we had to take into consideration. But the pros for a consulting group is that mainly that your name is out there for a lot of expectant mothers to see, and so the process moves really quickly. And I feel the need to pause right here and say that this is our experience. I know that everybody's adoption experience is different. Every state is different. Every child is different. So we have two boys. They are both domestic adoptions. That makes a difference too. I just want to put that giant caveat on there right now for you guys to hear. Okay, moving on. So anyway, we decided to pursue a consultant group adoption. We used Faithful Adoption Consultants, FAC. They've become really popular now. At the time, I don't think they were, but we have loved them. So that was our first route we went. But actually, for our first son, Brooks, right before we went active, we, long story short, got matched through a private adoption. Somebody we knew somebody who was having a little boy, and we said yes, and that process went really quickly, and we chose the same name for him as his birth mother. Just a lot of things happened, and the Lord affirmed, yes, I told you, your first child was going to come through adoption. And so after that process, I think originally we thought, okay, well, we'll adopt one, and then we will pursue our own children. Wrong phrase. That's what we thought at the time. But then we completely fell in love with the process of adoption and this little baby that we had in our arms that we could not have loved a single ounce more, no matter had he grown in my stomach or somebody else's. So anyway, my stomach, it's like I'm talking to a child. My womb, it's a weird word, y'all. Okay, anyway. So after that, we pursued adoption for a second time. And this time we actually went all the way through with FAC. So we went active in October. We got matched with a little boy in November, and he was born in January. So the process was very quick. Both of our adoptions, we got our little boys faster than I could have grown a baby. So the process does not have to take a long time. They were both perfectly healthy when they were born. We were open to either gender and any race. Please give us all the races. They're so beautiful. So that's kind of what happened with our two boys. Let me pause here and collect my thoughts. I feel like I'm talking so much, you guys. I hope this is helping some of you who really have questions and just don't know where to begin. Mostly what I want to tell you is that adoption can be a very hard and long process, but it isn't always. And so I just really don't want you to let those fears stop you from saying yes to what God is calling you to do. Both of our adoptions have been the very best yes we have ever said to God. We were scared at first, and more than scared, I think I was just overwhelmed with the amount of decisions and what do I do next. But you guys, God is so kind. He will hold your hand. He will lead you to your next right step. Like, you take baby steps to get there, and He will guide you every bit of the way. Some of you ask about finances. Our first adoption was a private one, and those are usually less expensive. So we fundraised. Is that a word? We raised money for that whole adoption. God covered every cent of it. We had like $13 left over, and we got Sonic as our first meal when we left the hospital with that little baby boy. Our second adoption was totally funded through Dear Mishka, through you all, which was absolutely beautiful because this Etsy shop was originally started as a way to bring home our first son, just to raise some extra money. And then it turned into this like giant love letter to our children, and we got to bring home both of our Mushkas through it. So that was really beautiful. Our third adoption coming up, we will probably fundraise again because my husband is now doing Dear Mushka full time. The second adoption, he had a full-time job and we were doing Dear Mushka, and so all the profits could go towards an adoption. That's not the case this time. Our money is going to keep the lights on and all of those sort of things. So we will probably fundraise again, and that's okay. Not everyone is called to adopt a child to bring them into their home, but we are all called to serve the least of these and to take care of orphans. And so part of that for some people is just giving money when you say that you need to adopt. That's part of what the Lord is calling them to say yes to. So don't be scared. I didn't realize what time it is. Okay, y'all, I have to cut this off right now. So I'm going to put a question box right here. If you have more specific questions, let me know and I will answer them. I'll also link to that blog post so you can read some more. I'm happy to talk about any and all of this. I feel like God has given us these specific adoption stories so that we can tell you that it can be done. You don't have to be scared, that it is the best yes that you can say. I feel like that's just the story we've been given. And so I want to be your cheerleader, and I want to answer your questions and help you. This is our adoption piece. It's a three-sided triangle. Duh, all triangles are. One for each side for I can't talk, y'all, all the parties involved in an adoption. So the birth family, the adoptive family, and the child. And then there's a heart that hangs in the middle just to represent the love that kind of holds them all together. So I will link to that right now. It comes in gold or silver, and it's got 2 different verses, one for the adoptive family and one for the birth family. So you can give it to your birth mother if you want to. It can make a really sweet gift during a time when you have no idea what else to give. So I will link that, and I will pop back on tomorrow to answer your questions. Good night. Okay, y'all, I'm jumping back in this morning to finish up talking about adoption, at least for now, because y'all know I'll ramble about this on and on into the years. So the first big question I got a lot of questions about was just regarding birth parents. So our adoptions open or closed? Do our boys have contact with their birth parents? Did we meet them? All those sort of things. So the first thing I want to say about birth parents and birth mothers specifically is that I think there's a lot of negative stereotype or fear around that concept. And I was in the exact same place the first time we adopted. I thought, what if this sweet, sweet mama decides to change her mind and she takes my baby from me? So the first thing I want to clarify is that a birth mother is not a birth mother until she has signed over rights and decided to place her child in another family. Up until that point, even if she chooses you through an agency, even if she promises that this baby will be yours, she's still just an expectant mother, just like any of you who have biological children, and she's considering the idea of adoption. So that was a really helpful clarification that somebody corrected me on one time, and I want to pass that. So the first time we adopted, we marked on all the forms that we were at least open to an open adoption, but I'll be honest, I was really nervous about that, and I think it's normal because, you guys, adoption is beautiful and redemptive, and it is a picture of the gospel, but it comes from a lot of brokenness, and ultimately the idea of a child having 2 families interacting in their lives is it's really complicated. And so I think it's normal to fear those things and to be uncertain about what the future looks like. But we hesitantly marked yes on those papers. We did it the first and the second time. And actually for both of our adoptions, our birth mothers did not want to know us beyond the birth of the child. So we never met Brooke's birth mother, though he was a private adoption, and we do have some connections to her. We've never talked to her. We've talked to some family members, and we would love to meet them and have them meet Brooks down the road whenever that makes sense for everybody involved. But we do not know her. We pray for her almost every night. Brooks knows his story. He knows who she is. We speak with the highest regards for who she is, and the family members we know the names of and all of that. We pray for them, and he knows that they are part of his family, and one day maybe he will get to meet them. Though he's 4, the concept is still hard, but we want him to hear it right now, who these people are and how important they are to us and to him. With our second adoption, we did the same thing, and we did get to meet he actually has a birth mother and birth father who were both at the hospital when they delivered. They're great. We had fun talking to them in the hospital room. It was hard and a little bit awkward because just what do those conversations look like? We didn't have a ton of relationship before. Sometimes birth mothers will want to, talk on the phone with you. Here's my phone. We don't even use these kind of phones anymore. They'll want to really get to know you on the phone and learn who you are. And our birth family was not like that with Maddox, our second, but we did meet them in the hospital. She had some other children. I got to sit on the couch and read books to them. We've got pictures with Oof, I'm long-winded today. Okay, so ultimately to answer you guys' questions, we have, I guess, semi-open adoptions. We are very open to getting to know these women in the future. We love them, we talk about them, we know their names, but they do not know where we live. We don't talk on the phone per their choice. We do send updates to our second child, Maddox's agency we got him out of because they require that, but we really want to. There's no way for us to know if his birth mother is getting those, if she's choosing to look at them, but we continue to send them. I'm going to write a letter today about what he's like it too and send some pictures. So they've got all of those if they want to look at them down the line. And we really pray that our boys will one day know The last thing I'll say about birth families is that I have some friends who do have relationships with birth families, and you guys, they are beautiful relationships covering the board, like talk every day to send a present for Christmas. That's it. You can figure out what that looks like between you and the birth family. Just because you say open doesn't mean like they're moving in next door. You will have the opportunity to talk that out and work through it and figure it out. But I say if the birth mother is open to it, have at least some contact. That is so good for the children to just be able to know where they came from and have some questions asked. And it's just beautiful and redemptive. It's a way for you to love somebody else that you wouldn't normally have contact. The last thing I'll say about birth families is that I have some friends who do have relationships with birth families, and you guys, they are beautiful relationships covering the board, like talk every day to send a present for Christmas. That's it. You can figure out what that looks like between you and the birth family. Just because you say open doesn't mean like they're moving in next door. You will have the opportunity to talk that out and work through it and figure it out. But I say if the birth mother is open to it, have at least... Okay, onward. I'm going to zoom through these questions. Got a few about the home inspection. Like, is it really actually that hard? Our experience was that it's not hard. It is a little tedious. You do have a stack of paperwork you've just got to fill out, but it's easy questions. You guys, like, where have you lived in the past 10 years? They just need to check and make sure you're okay, people. You have to, like, go get a medical exam to say that you're healthy. If you have pets, they've got to be updated on their shots. You've got to get fingerprinted. There's a list of things to do, but it is not hard stuff. When the people come into your home, they don't care that it's spotless. They just want to see that it's a safe place for a child to be raised. We have had a few different social workers come into our home for this process. They are all so sweet. They love getting to know you. You just get to share your story. It's a very easy process. Don't be scared about that. Okay, number 2, I had some questions about what to do when your husband is not on board. I know that is the case with some of you, or it's the other way around. A husband feels led and the wife does not. So I think what I've found a lot of comfort in actually came from Abraham's story, where he is called out. He's told to leave his family and his people and go to this new land that God has called him to. And God doesn't tell him where he's going exactly. He just says, like, go and I will lead you. And that's how I felt in this adoption process, that God made it clear to me what we were supposed to do. And so I just marched forward as best I could. And then we would pause along the way. I got some questions about fundraising and grants. We have not ever pursued the grant route. We always felt like we had enough people around us to help support us in the fundraising, and we would leave the grants to people who didn't have like an Instagram account like this to get some help with. So I don't know anything about that, but for fundraising, for Brooks, for our first one, we made a big puzzle and we sold pieces to the puzzle. It was a pretty effective fundraiser. I think people really liked being able to buy a piece of something, and we had the puzzle framed and we put it in Brooks' room, and we wrote everybody's name on the back of their piece on like a double-sided glass frame. So it sparked conversation with Brooks, and I think it just really let people feel a part of something. We also sold shirts. I guess I actually did that for Maddox, but I sold them in the Dear Mushka shop. So it was like kind of fundraiser, kind of just for Dear Mushka. But we made a shirt for that. People always love a shirt. This time around, I've got a different idea, and I'll probably share that with you guys soon. So stay tuned. Got some questions about this child number 3. No, we are not matched yet. We are getting all of our ducks in a row. I'm finishing up our profile book. I've really just got to add Maddox to it. So we are hoping to be active like middle of February, maybe. We'll see how quickly we can move through things. But at that point, we'll go active. We don't care about gender or race. Whatever the Lord gives us is good. Yes, we are going through FAC again. We had such a good experience with them. So we're just going to keep going with what we know. I'll keep you guys updated. And the last thing some of you guys were very bold to ask, which I love, is regarding biological children for us. So do we ever want biological children? And the answer to that is kind of no. If the Lord gives them to us, we will obviously be ecstatic. I mean, how could you not? But that is not a plan we have for our future. And I think it's really cool because, the Lord called us to adopt number 1, and we never thought that's how we would continue to grow our family. We kind of thought it was like we'll be obedient to this one and then we'll pursue biological children. But like the Bible says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And so we began delighting ourselves in God, and he actually changed the desires of our heart. That verse doesn't mean if you delight yourself in him, he gives you everything you want. It means he changes your heart to align with his. And so over the course of these years, I no longer want biological children. Like I said, if it happens, that's great, and that would be a gift from God. But what I really want is to grow our family through adoption. He's put that call on our lives, and we love it. I don't feel like I'm missing out or not experiencing something God had for me. So we are really happy just adopting. If that's all we ever do, then we will be so grateful for the way God called us to grow our family and to love people and just pursue what he has laid in front of us, and just said yes to it.